Welcome to another edition of Turn 6 Garage, and today we're discussing common faults that this Ford car seems to have, and also other European Fords of this period. So in this video, discussing a couple of things here, a couple of small faults that have quite decent sized consequences, albeit in the safety and the comfort department, that seem to be common to not just the Ford car, but to ultimately other European Fords of the same period. So the first problem is the SRS warning light. Now, a common thing I've found with a lot of these cars is when the airbag warning light is on, it flashes 4 times, stops, then flashes another 4 times. Now that fault has to do with the belt buckles. But it's not just the belt buckles that can cause it. Underneath the driver and passenger seat, there are 2 wires. These are for the belt buckle and the belt tensioner has wires that hook into the SRS system. These wires are prone to having issues. They're easily unseated, which means that they can cause the connection to be strained or not even on at all and cause the airbag warning light to turn on. Also, the terminals can be quite dirty, but it's quite a simple fix. So for this car, all it needed was to go underneath the seat and fettle with the cables, and the warning light turned off because I bought it with the warning light on. Quite good. The SRS light will give you actually a number of flashes. Now this is actually the code that it points to in terms of the defect, and I've put a link below to all the defect codes for Ford SRS lights of this period. So you don't need a scanner to find out. You can just look at the number of times the light flashes, stops, then flashes again. They'll give you a number. Put the 2 numbers together, time flash 1, time flash 2, and that gives you the number. Not plus, put them next to each other. So say 4 flashes, then 6 flashes is code 46, 4 then 4 is code 44. 3 then 1 is code 31. The next thing is the air conditioning and heating system. Now, in this car, when I got it, the air conditioning blew cold, and that was it. Even when the heater was on full bore, it wouldn't blow hot air. And that's very easy. Easy fix. It is the heater control valve. Common issue with this, the Focus and the Fiesta of the same period. This is the original heater control valve. As you can see, these little plastic parts like to crack and break. These break, your heating doesn't work. So, €21 part. The part is located under the windscreen and it's in the engine bay behind a little plastic panel. It's relatively easy to get to and you can change it out very quickly. So that solves the heating problem with this car. Now this specific car had never had a coil change. Now on the 1.3 Endura E engine, the old Kent engine, it had a distributor type coil like this. Now for some reason in Australia, probably because the manufacturers use it to help them sell more cars, they don't like changing coils too much. So this coil here is the original coil that was put into the car back in 2002. Could be worse. There are other cars that we've got where the coils are much older and never been changed. Simple, cheap part, yet no one does it. Well, that's because they use the car to run rough to try and sell you another one. That's seemingly how many manufacturers work. Make the price of that coil and its leads expensive, so you have to change that part. Yeah, not a good thing. Now in the car, the air conditioning is reasonably good, but you have to remember it's a 21-year-old car and a 27-year-old design. And a lot of these continental European cars at that time weren't designed with air conditioning in mind. So you have to have a bit of give and take in it, but it works okay now. Other interesting thing I found is with the car, the speaker, once I replaced it, took a bit of time to work. Now, a certain thing I've believed to be the case with this one is that the driver's side speaker hasn't worked for a very long time, because getting the radio to understand that it had 2 speakers rather than 1 seemed to be a bit of an interesting situation, because sometimes it would work, sometimes it didn't. Now it works perfectly. So where does this all leave us with the Ford car? Well, the Ford car is a great little package if you want a good little run around. It's interesting and it's exciting and it's got faults that are relatively easy to sort out. Now, one thing when you come to buy a second-hand car is all cars have faults. Doesn't matter what it is, where it is, it's always going to have a common fault. Now, it appears with the car The one thing that makes it really good is the fact that those common faults are relatively cheap and relatively easy to sort out. Something that cannot be said of a lot more modern cars. That's why I like the car. It's fun to drive, interesting to look at, it's reasonably comfortable, and above all else, it's cheap to run. Now, the thing that does sort of hold this back in terms of cheap to run is the fuel economy. Because it's an engine that dates back to the early 60s, the fuel economy isn't brilliant. It's easily outperformed by much more modern opposition. I got better mileage off the Getz and the Micro over this by some margin. Now, that's because they're a lot more modern cars and a lot more modern engines. So that's one thing you got to consider about the car. It's a reasonably modern car with a very old-fashioned engine. I really do think that this is one of those underrated cars, particularly in Australia, where it wasn't popular when it was new. And I really mean it wasn't popular. This car took 1.5 years to sell. This was on the dealer's forecourt for over a year. It was complied in October 2002 and delivered new in December 2003. But, I gotta say, despite those common faults, it's still great fun and nice to have. Thank you for watching. If you like what we do, remember to like and subscribe.